Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today, I'm joined with Timmy Gallagher, who is the founder of Evolute Performance and Leadership Coaching. Timmy, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dan. And I got to say, I love the title of your podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I got to jump in. The reason why I do is because I'm into the "Who are you?" question, and there's two ways I answer it. But the one way will be, "I'm my mother's son."
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. So I've been looking forward to this conversation. We just recently connected and were able to get this thing scheduled pretty quickly. But a lot of things in common, servant leadership,
Yeah.
earthing, grounding,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. But before we get started the conversation, tell my audience a little bit about, who is Timmy Gallagher?
Glad to do that. But first of all, I got to say, if nobody's told you lately, thanks for doing what you do.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The idea and the energy to bring this type of conversation to our species is a worthwhile endeavor. There's so much egoic stuff out there that this type of organic and deep conversation is well worth people listening to. So, Dan, thank you.
You're welcome. I enjoy it. I love it. I love having um, deep conversations with people. I think it's important.
Yeah, we better put a timer on ourselves so we don't.
No doubt.
So yeah, who am I, right? Well, I am my mother's son. Uh I'm also a beloved son of God. And there's a great story behind that. But coaching wise, I'm about 2 to 3 years into coaching formally. And that came, and this is very much of a hero's journey story. It was a knock at the door. I had a man come to me and say, I've been looking to get to the next level of my journey in life. And I've been talking with life coaches and executive coaches, and none of them really connected. And I hear and see what you do. So I went in on that. Will you coach me? And I was not a coach per se. And I believe in the hero's journey. And when the door knocks, you answer. And I said, yes. And that started it. And then that put me into, well, maybe this is something worth looking into. And I ended up going to Brown University for their School of Leadership and Performance Coaching certification, and following up that with the Positive Intelligence program with Shazad Shamin, Stanford lecturer on mental fitness in particular. So that's how I got there and came across you and thought we would connect and have a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the fact that, your coaching is really built around, servant leadership. And that's, one of the things that throughout, you know, my coaching career on the field, that's what it
Yeah.
was all about. It was about, making my players better. And again, that was in a sports setting, not so much in a life coach setting, but it really was life coaching as well, because my philosophy was teaching them, leadership skills and life lessons through the games that we were playing. So it really did turn into life coaching, and I've been able to connect with many of my players since we've been traveling, and been able to see the fruits of that labor, which has been an incredible blessing. So, I guess it's one thing to get that knock on the door,
Mm-hmm.
and to hear your calling, but it's another thing to actually answer your calling.
Mm-hmm.
So, was there a process for you, to go through to understand that coaching was your calling? Like, did you embrace it immediately, or did you fight it? Did you have to have a
Yeah.
conversation with God, thinking maybe he had the wrong
Yeah.
door? So
Yeah.
how did that process work for you?
That's a super question. And most people will hear about, oh, they knock at the door and they move on, but you're really on to something. And I'll correlate it with what you do as a sports coach, because to get to the game, you got to do all the practice.
Yep.
To get to the coaching, something had to be occurring before that. See, everything that happens in life, it happens before it happens, right? The tree that has grown outside that window happened before it became that tree. So I went into a deliberate period of discernment to see if this is like an egoic thing or not. And what I learned was it was all leading to this. Example, October 13th, 1993 was my last drink of alcohol. In the Gallagher household, red hair, good looks, and alcoholism running the family. And I got 2 out of the 3. And there's red hair under this hat. And in recovery, I learned about being part of something bigger, about having a process that went deep and having somebody to help you on that journey that we call a sponsor. And then when I was in law enforcement, particularly in the Jersey State Police, we literally have what we call a coach. You know, that Obi-Wan Kenobi of I will show you. So I'm just looking at where I've fallen into these patterns. So in all the spiritual work I've done, I've been through a men's rites of passage and a year and a half of spiritual work with a men's group. When you add it all up, it made perfect sense that somebody was knocking on my door. In fact, it was a validation of you're somewhere that now it's time to be of service.
Yeah. I love that. And, it's funny, as you mentioned about all the different things that you went through there. It's just proof that we're all connected, and, our journey through this life is not alone.
Yeah.
And, when you hear the term, like, a friend of mine who does another podcast, we were on each other's shows, and we talked about the term self-made billionaire or something like that, or self-made entrepreneur. And that is such a BS term, because there is no one that is self-made. I think there are self-made losers, but every winner has a team that's surrounding them, people who have mentored them, who have helped them, who've lifted them up. And, I think that's where coaching is so important. And going back to the sports world and, being a baseball guy, what you said about, you know, everything happens ahead of time. Like,
Yeah.
champions in October in baseball are actually made in March in spring training and in
Yeah.
the off season. And that's what a lot of people forget, that, you know, the game itself is a segment of 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
But you're talking hours and, days and weeks and months of training that go into performing at your highest level on the field. And it's such a metaphor for life, because that
Yeah.
is, again, you know, everything that we go through prepares us for a certain moment. And then that, moment is here and gone. And now we're preparing for something else. And I love how you put that, and just, you know, making people understand that, we are all connected, and, we're not in this alone. I mean, we come into the world alone, we leave the world alone, but we are all interconnected, so much while we're here, um, you know, beyond anyone's comprehension, really, from other humans to the earth itself. Like, we're all connected, and there's all kinds of energies flowing, um, that we all feed off of.
Yeah. 100%. We recently, in our family, in our extended family, there was a birth of this young boy named Logan. And he was a preemie, and just what the mom and dad went through when we went through as a family. And wow, boom, there, he's born. It happened before it happened.
Yeah.
And it's that process. And Ivan goes so far of, and you may have heard this before, but when Logan was being born, he probably thought, I am dying. I'm being severed from my universe, my connection. And we were all here knowing, no, 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 this is what we call life. And I
Yeah.
believe it's nothing but the same process on the other side. What we experience as death is nothing but eternal life for those on the other side. We are always connected. That dead tree, that tree I spoke about, if it falls dead and we chop it up and we give it the right accelerant, it will give off energy. There's always a connection.
Yeah. No, that is so true. And even what you talked about with addiction,
Mm-hmm.
we do some volunteer work at a faith-based recovery center down in Beaumont, Texas, called the Dream Center, and sitting and talking to those guys who are just starting their recovery process, and some who have been you know are still battling, and are now in perhaps their third or fourth or fifth stint in recovery,
Mm-hmm.
and just that understanding of the constant battle that they're
Mm-hmm.
going through, to you know get through that battle. um, tell me a little, because at the end of the day you can go through um, you know all of the treatment centers you want
Mm-hmm.
to, but if you don't make that decision that you want to get better, you will never get better. I mean, my sister just lost her battle with addiction about 2 years ago, and again, it was just a constant battle and a constant, you know, her not making the decision to get better. So, you know, when we talk to those guys at the Dream Center, I've done several podcasts with some of the guys in there as well, and just talking about, well, the difference between my first 3 or 4 or 5 stints in a rehabilitation center is this time it was my decision to come in here.
Mm.
And so tell me a little bit about that process for you. I mean, because it's similar to the knock on the door,
Mm-hmm.
um you know where you finally said, you know what, um okay, so there's a history of this in the
Mm-hmm.
Gallagher family, but I don't have to be a part of that history. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to make the decision to get better today. So what was that process like for you?
It's interesting because that process is what we alluded to earlier. That's the monomyth. That's the hero's journey. So in our Christian faith, if we're going to look at that, that is the Paschal mystery. There is the ascent, the descent, and the resurrection. It is uh, the disorder, the reorder, and a new order. It is like for an athlete, the breakdown of the muscle, the rebuild of the muscle. The pattern is there. It's in every good movie, poem, piece of literature. That is the pattern. So what's neat about what I learned is, obviously I saw that pattern, tongue in cheek, of red hair, good looks, and alcoholism. Timothy, you got a drinking problem. Go there and get help. But what I've learned now as a coach, particularly a mental fitness coach, is that pattern makes sense because that's how our brain is set up. That brainstem, cerebellum, limbic system, that survive part of your brain, fight, flight, freeze, and then feed and forticate, it's 3 to 5 times stronger. It gets first bite at every stimuli, and it wants to keep you in survive mode, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. It got you and I here. We're the best of our race, of our species. We're our ancestors got us here. They survived. But to thrive, you have to transcend, transform, get to that other side. And that calls for work. And the work calls for what you're asking me to answer is make that choice. On a real good day, it's more than a decision, it's a choice. See, when I decide IDE, homicide, gentricide, fratricide, patricide, I'm killing something off. And there's time for that, like in survive mode, activate, go, saber-toothed tiger, you and I are running, or we're fighting it, or we're freezing. But something that is deeper, that's more wholesome, that's a choice because it comes from a different area of our brain and a different area of our body. Like my wife, the lovely Mrs. Gallagher, I didn't decide to marry her, I chose her.
It's cool. And it's amazing, just kind of changing that spin, how it can give
Yeah.
you a totally different outlook. um, so what type of clients are coming to you um, for your coaching? Because again, a lot of it revolves around your mental state, and understanding that your your brain is a muscle just like
Mm-hmm.
everything else, and it's
Mm-hmm.
got to be trained. And no matter how many years of training it might have had in the past, like you can retrain it.
Yep.
So there's people who are out there have like just a history of like negative
Mm-hmm.
thought processes and negative energy, and the first reaction is going to be a negative reaction, and they think, well, this is how I was brought up. It comes
Mm-hmm.
from my mom and dad. It comes from my grandparents. It comes from my great grandparents. But they don't understand that, again, just like you chose that addiction wasn't going to be part of your story anymore, you can retrain your brain to create more positive energy and positive thoughts, and where that reaction is positive first, as opposed to as
Yeah.
opposed to you know, what's going to go wrong if I make this decision? You go, all right, what's going to go right when I make
Yeah.
this decision?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
walk me through that process a little bit. It's retraining the brain.
Yeah, I'll be glad to do that. But again, it happens before it happens. And we're going back to what we've already said is that it is what is your wake up call? See, pain is personal. Suffering is to be shared. The wake up call, that knock at the door is you crash the car and you're drunk, or you've had the addiction, you've made a mess of the family, and you're divorced. Because that is usually the only thing strong enough to knock our survive brain, parentheses, ego, close parentheses, out of the way and say, okay, how am I really going to fix this? How am I going to get to the root cause of this? And you can't decide on a root cause. You have to choose to fix the root cause. Why? It's going to be work. It's a 4-letter word, work. So here's what I can tell you about what we know from the neuroscience and other areas of that neuroplasticity. Everybody knows that term now. Well, to get to that thrive part of your brain, it's actually very simple. It's just like with your athletes in the physical realm. You need to do a mental fitness exercise for at least 10 seconds or longer for 15 minutes or more total for the day on a consistent basis, and you will retrain that brain. You will literally activate those neural pathways that have not been activated. So the clients that come to me are people that have realized something's not working for me. So it starts with a circumstance or outcome that's negative. When we work on this together, we find the gift or opportunity. Now I got, Dan, let me go back. Pascal mystery. Let's say you go for the Jesus thing, right? So here's a guy that said, I have a message. I need you to get this. I'll give it in a parable. I'll give it in a miracle. I'll role model it. You think you're killing me. You're not. It's always that pattern of getting to the other side. And when we get to that gift or opportunity and you've developed that neural pathway, life now is not different. It's new. Everything now you can find the gift or opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. And I want to kind of go back to something we were talking about a little earlier, is just how we're all connected. And before we started recording, something we haven't talked about yet is ways that we can continue to connect to nature and
Mm-hmm.
and to the earth. And when we first started communicating about having you on the show, one of the things that you talked about is that you are an earther, that you walk barefoot, and you're stay grounded. And it's something I've been doing now for about 4 or 5 years as well, which again is something that I never would have thought I did, would have done prior to that. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
walking barefoot, prior to probably 2017 or 2018 was, just, nasty to me at times, and then understanding how we are connected and rooted to the earth. I try to walk barefoot as much as I possibly can
Mhm.
at this stage of my life. So, you know, how long have you been earthing or grounding, and what brought you to the understanding, um, of how you can pull that energy from the earth and then, be able to pass it on to others as well?
Yeah, and I can't tell you that it was like I read this or like it was like that. It just evolved. It To coin a term, it was very organic. Um, I know this when I went through my rites of passage, I learned, the word hummus. We are of the earth. We will return to the earth. Obviously, humility is baked in there. The idea of being part of something bigger, such as like a team sport or nature. I mean, nature's God's cathedral. So you really want to go to church, get outside.
Yeah.
And then the idea, if you want to go with a biblical reference or just a common sense reference, well, if that's sacred, you get connected to it. Take your shoes off. This is sacred space. And so all of that, along with just like in sobriety, we take our inventory every night. Just so the idea of like get connected. I mean, you can do a mental fitness exercise barefoot on the ground. Just feel that grass or feel that dirt and flex your toes a little and just feel that gravity holding you there. You get it, right? With 10 seconds more of that, you're developing that neural pathway. So it all just fit. And now it's just I like just you do it. And it for me, every day, morning and night, snow, rain, beautiful weather. You go out there and get grounded. I do allow myself, I'll kick some of the snow out of the way, but, but it's deal with it. The pain is the such touchstone of all spiritual growth. So it just evolved. Yeah, it just seemed to make sense.
Yeah. What type of what type of reaction do you get from other people who don't understand? 'Cause again, I know some of my reactions are pretty comical,
Yeah.
and especially I think there's even probably like a stereotype of what type of people that do that, and you know big burly bearded dude
Yeah.
isn't normally that stereotype. So when I tell people that I do it, I guess get a whole array of just different um, reactions. So I'd like to hear, like some of the reactions that you get when tell people that you're out there grounding barefoot.
I don't share it with everybody. And the grounding's just part of my morning routine. It's gift, grounding, body, breath. So I bring a gift every morning to the earth. For me, it's I feed the birds. Then it's my grounding. Then it's my body work, stretching, yoga, and then breath work, intermittent hypoxia. Some people know it through like a Wim Hof kind of thing. So in there is that grounding. And when I tell them about grounding or that whole routine, often I get like, oh, that's nice. But here's what's funny, Dan, is it's very interesting how a week, a month, a few months later, hey, can you write down how you do that? And they start picking up on it because I think if you really give it a shot of, the listeners of just try it for like a week kind of thing, it just works.
Does you can't really explain it to someone that
Yeah.
doesn't do it. So um, that's what I say as well. Is like just give it a shot. And it's again, I would have never um, guessed you know what it does for you, and it's real. I mean, sometimes when you talk to people, I think it's like this weird woohoo stuff, and
Yeah.
that's not the case at all. I mean, it is just again, it proves that we are all connected, and just like you said, we came from the earth, and we're going to go back from the earth.
Yeah.
Um, dust to dust is
Yeah.
definitely what we are. Um, so I think again for listeners who might be listening to this part of our conversation and are kind of doubting, you know, just try it, just give it a shot, try it, and I think you'll be amazed by um, the true, I mean, true health benefits of it. You know, um, not just mind, but body and spirit as
Yeah.
well. You know,
Yeah.
truly keeping a healthy mind, body, and spirit, um, grounding and earthing contributes to that for sure.
Yep.
Um, so your, you know, service, service to others, you know, is a big part of your your coaching, your life in general. I think that's one of the things that you know drew us to do this show is just you know the underlying service factor in both of our lives. Um, and again, we hit on it a little bit about just you know mentoring and how we're all connected. But um, when did you really you know kind of start to buy into servant leadership and that you know really leading from behind, so to speak, is um, you know the best way to go about it?
Again, it's that pattern of when I look back, it was just developing again organically, particularly with when I got sober. Um, then in my career in law enforcement, obviously there's a lot of leadership training, and you started hearing about servant leadership. And you can even obviously get on YouTube and look at Simon Sinek and what he talks about servant leadership and all these other people. Um, and again, it fit with the idea of humility, being of the earth. Nobody gets there alone, right? Um, my uncle, my dad, and my uncle were identical twins. They've both since passed away, but my uncle used to tell a story, and he was a captain in the New Jersey State Police and a chief of staff and, a leader. And he used to talk about the turtle on the fence post. Did you ever hear the story about the turtle on the fence post?
I did a long time ago, so please give me a
Well,
refresher.
you get it. He said, Timothy, if you're ever driving down the road and you see a turtle on a fence post, pull over and talk to it. And then when you do, you'll say to the turtle, how did you get up there? And the response will be, well, how do you think I got up here? I didn't get up here by myself. you
Yeah,
know so it speaks to that point. We don't get anywhere of, I don't even want to say success, but of significance by ourselves. So servant leadership, it just like standing ground, it just made sense. Yes, you could read books on it now and watch YouTube clips on it now, but it just made sense because it fits the pattern. There seems to be a pattern. Like, listen, whether it's coaching or yoga or whatever, like there's these basic patterns. Call it the collective unconscious, call it the universal wisdom of, hey folks, if you want to live a better life, a thriving life, here's some things that'll work out for you. The nuances of it, that's your artistic interpretation. But a lot of how we're living, it's not healthy and it's not working.
yeah.
And the idea is be of service, be connected. Grandma Gallagher used to say, the saying of, if you put your troubles in the middle of a room, you climb over people to take them out. She told me, Timothy, that's not how it goes. We all put our problems in the middle of the room. We all take an equal share out.
Yeah, that's cool.
And just that pivot, right?
Yeah,
Just that little pivot changed everything.
yeah. That's one of the things that drew us to the Dream Center and why we enjoy going down there to volunteer and you know help them out is because a big component of their recovery process is service to others.
Yeah.
Um, you know, they do food drives and clothing drives, and you know, as you well know, an addiction is a very selfish disease.
Mm-hmm.
So when you break that down, I mean, when you're addicted, you're literally thinking about yourself constantly. You know, how are you going to get your next drink, your next fix? And you'll hurt anyone around you to do that. The you know the wake behind you does not matter as long as you get to your next, you know, whatever that addiction is, whether it's gambling, whether it's you know alcohol, you know, hard drugs, porn, whatever the case is, the wake of destruction behind you is irrelevant to you because you're just looking for one thing, how to get your next fix. And, what we loved about Dream Center, what we love about the Dream Center is they break that down immediately and get the guys into thinking about someone other than themselves, about getting involved in community service, in giving back, in service to others. And, that is such an incredible component in their healing. And, I think for you to be able to come through that addiction and, um, become a servant leader the way you have, again, comes back to that mind shift of, it's not all about me. It's not all about, um, you know, what's best for me. It's understanding that when you give to others, like the feeling that you get is so uplifting. So was there ever like a rock bottom moment for you when, you know, you knew you had to make this mind shift and get your addiction under control and, become a servant leader?
Yes. um, I haven't been asked that in a long time. And my bottom wasn't as low as it could have gone, but I'll go back to your baseball. A win in April is just as important as a win in September.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So your bottom comes in April, your bottom comes in September, as long as you get that wake up call. Um, and what I know about that now is not only did I have a brain, we all do, that's 3 to 5 times stronger, survive than thrive, and gets first bite at every stimuli. Compound that with, and you're addicted to a substance. So 3 to 5 times stronger. So if that brain can do 500 push-ups, then I've got to be able to do at least 501. And then so that brain plus add alcohol, self will run riot. Wow, we've got some work to do. And you were hit on it. It's not so much about the fight and the struggle. It's about learn to let it go. Well, how do I let it go? Bring the body, the mind will follow. You want to stay sober? Go help another suffering alcoholic. It is the core of it is that easy. And by helping somebody else, what are we doing? Serving.
Yeah.
It's, again, there's the pattern. Like, ladies and gentlemen, this is not rocket science, right? It has been there through all our spiritual avatars and all our great stories. Just imagine, here's what I'll offer to you. Imagine if humanity, if let's just say 25% of humanity on this earth really embraced and lived the idea of servant leadership, what would our world look like right now?
And it would look
Yeah.
so much different
Yeah.
than what it
Yes.
what it
Yes.
does today.
Yes. Yes. And that is in my journey when I can help someone realize this is your brain, this is coaching, this is a thoughtful conversation, this is your journey, and you now can become one of that 25%, then I'm just completing the connection I was meant to do on this thing called Earth. That's all. It's not me. You just become the conduit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And it really goes to the concept and the meaning behind, the subtitle of my podcast is as many little people, many little places. So
100%.
um so we're just about out of time. Before I get to my final question, is there anything you want to talk about that we didn't touch on?
No, there's nothing I want to talk about, but I, because I know how the brain works and I know the power of reinforcement, again, thank you for this conversation and thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm sure you do it because it's what you do, but it's on that journey to have those mile markers of good job. They're important. So, Dan, seriously, good job. This was a great conversation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you are right. Those words of encouragement do a ton to help keep people moving forward. So I think that's an important lesson is just being able to show that gratitude to other people is so important. So, don't be afraid to thank somebody. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to lift them up, because you never know what they're going through in that moment, and that little word of encouragement can be just the boost they need to get over the hump. So, I do appreciate that. Timmy, how do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out for coaching?
Yeah.
Where can they find Timmy Gallagher at?
Yeah. Thanks. Uh, LinkedIn is my preferred social media platform. It's Timmy Gallagher, and the company is Evolute Performance on LinkedIn. Certainly, there's a website, evoluteperformance.com. And I still have it. There's a personal website, timmygallagher.com. So you can find me there and direct message me, etc. And I work when a client comes on board, we work together for close to up towards of 4 sessions before we even talk about compensation. I believe in servant leadership that much that let's make sure we can be of service to each other.
Awesome. I love that. All right. Well, that brings us to our final question, which again we've talked about over and over throughout this podcast. I think it'll be pretty easy for you at this point. But again, the subtitle is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So, Timmy, what's one of the little things that you're doing to make the world a little bit better place?
The quick answer, grounding. Well, here's what I'll offer this to the listeners. It's the oxygen mask thing. Please put the oxygen mask on for yourself, because then the better you shows up. So whether it's grounding, whether it's yoga, whether it's walking a dog, whether it's that smile, whether it's eating a little better, whether it's going to that AA meeting, do that little bit for you so your better you can show up.
Love that. I love that. Yeah, you can't fill from an empty cup.
Correct.
And so many times we think that doing things for ourselves is selfish, but truly you have to be selfish first, before you can do for others. So that's so important. I think that's something that we can lose sight of at times, where you're giving, and not replenishing your own cup. So again, that's something I've learned probably over the past 5 years, to really take time and recharge and refuel my own spirit so that I can actually help others more than what I had been previously. So I love that answer. And folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeyofmymotherson.com or danclouser.com. Hop on there, pick up a copy of my most recent book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Timmy, again, I thank you so much for joining me in the conversation. This is great. And I think we're going to help a lot of people through this conversation.
I really appreciate this time and what you're doing, Dan. Thanks for completing the connection.
You bet. I enjoyed it.